in which the Commission considers all the alternatives for implementation of certain programs and policies. I have a list of several rulemakings here that have somehow, again, this is not an exhaustive list, but some of these rulemakings, pieces of these rulemaking initiatives have some impact on the development of energy storage. But I do want to focus on two of these rulemaking proceedings. The first is Rulemaking 10-12-007, which is the energy storage mandate, and the second is Rulemaking 16-02-007. With regard to the energy storage mandate, back in 2013, and as you may remember, AB 2514 ordered the CPUC to establish an energy storage mandate. Well, this rulemaking actually implemented that statute, and the CPUC came out with this mandate for energy utilities. It ordered utilities to procure 1,325 megawatts of energy storage by 2020. The IOUs, and that means the investor-owned utilities, the privately held utilities, filed their plans for the initial solicitation back in 2014. And as of August 2018, according to the CEC most recent report on the progress of this procurement, the utilities have procured or are seeking approval from the CPUC to procure 1,497 megawatts of storage, so almost 1.5 gigawatts of storage, which means that they are on a path to actually exceed the target. Interestingly, those projects, only 1/5 of those projects approximately are online as of last month. But all of these projects procured under the energy storage mandate must be online or installed by 2024. Another really interesting fact that was in the same report is that in California, the energy storage mandate has actually driven growth of certain technologies and energy storage in general. As you can see in this graph, and unfortunately you can't really see the numbers here. I don't know why they put the block the bars on the side, but thermal energy storage systems have almost tripled over the past 7 years. And California battery energy storage systems have have multiplied by several times just because of this mandate. And you can see the impact started in 2014. So this is pretty interesting. This is a pretty interesting example of how policy is.
How do you know the causal relationship between policy, the government policy?
Well, maybe Jim can chime in, but before the energy storage mandate, as you can see, there was the growth was almost flat. And once the energy storage mandate and the utilities had to procure energy storage in 2014, and on the graph on the left-hand side, you can see how it grew exponentially. It started in 2015, 2016, 2017. And Jen, would you agree with that? Yeah.
Sorry, is that based on megawatt? Or?
Yeah, that is, I think it is megawatts, but yes, it is megawatts, yes. So, I also mentioned the reference system plan, right? And this is the other proceeding that I wanted to focus on, and that is Rulemaking 16-02-007 at the CPUC level as well. In this proceeding, what the Commission is trying to do is to balance all these very ambitious goals of SB 350 that I was mentioning before. As you may imagine, that is not easy. So the Commission has been going through several iterations of modeling to come up with an optimal mix of resources that will need to be added to the system in the next 12 years so we can achieve the reductions that we're expecting and acquire and procure all the renewables that we are supposed to procure. So very interestingly, in this proceeding, the Commission has said that at least 2,000 megawatts of energy battery storage will be needed in the next 12 years. And this is in addition to the 1.3 that is already gigawatts that is already required under the energy storage mandate. So this reference system plan came out before SB 100. We expect it is being considered right now at the Commission. They're reviewing it. It's going to be revised, but the only possible expectation is that more battery storage will be needed. So right now we expect that at least 16% of the new resources that will be added in California, procured in California, will be battery storage. So this is another proceeding to keep an eye on. Now, I also mentioned the CEC, the California Energy Commission, and as I indicated, the California Energy Commission regulates publicly owned utilities. Publicly owned utilities have also obtained or procured energy storage. In addition to the pretty large pumped storage facility, Keizai, that belongs to LADWP, publicly owned utilities have procured approximately 60 megawatts of storage, and they're expected to procure more than 200 megawatts of storage by 2021. And all of these, their progress in terms of meeting the energy storage mandates is usually posted by the CEC in the Integrated Energy Policy Report. But very importantly, the CEC administers grants and has provided funding for some demonstration projects and some R&D projects. And those projects have tested the market value and the technologies associated with sodium sulfur battery storage, which is a PG&E project, microgrid systems, that's the SDG&E's project, and with the EPIC funding, which is a fund that is funded with ratepayer money, but is invested in energy storage, energy projects, very specifically. The Commission, the CEC, has funded different R&D projects such as flywheel technologies, chemical batteries, B2G projects, the LA Air Force Base project, which has pretty interesting results, value estimation tool, and also the PV integration projects. And these are among others. So all of these projects have been facilitated by the CEC. Finally, or almost finally, the Keizai. Well, as I mentioned, the Keizai has been pretty important in terms of opening wholesale energy markets in California. It has been a pioneer. And there are several initiatives, stakeholder initiatives, that have some components that impact energy storage. But very specifically, the non-generator resources and ancillary services has opened up and removed some barriers for battery storage to compete in the wholesale market. And since battery storage is both a generator and it can also serve as load, the fact that those two key elements of battery storage are considered in the wholesale market has facilitated, it has given access to energy storage resources to this market. So that is a key process that has led to Order 841 from FERC, released earlier this year. So I have to say that Keizai is not the only one that has had these participation models. PGEM on the East Coast has also allowed participation of energy storage and removed barriers for those resources. In fact, it is the largest energy storage market in the United States. It has approximately 250 megawatts of storage. But what is very interesting and very important about this rule is that the FERC has ordered all the regional transmission operators and independent system operators to revise their rules, their market rules, so they will consider energy storage, the correct characteristics of energy storage. So this rule does not tell the RTOs and the ISOs what they need to do. They simply lay out some principles of what participation models should look like, and those principles actually are intended to remove barriers for energy storage, such as energy storage needs to be valued on its technical merits, and that storage needs to be both an energy service and a load service, and that the battery duration should also be considered in the market in terms of bidding purposes and bidding parameters. And with that, I know my colleagues are going to talk more about these rules, so I'm going to leave it like that, but I look forward to talking to you more about this in our networking session. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. So the rest of the so for the rest of the time, we're going to have 3 panelists, and I appreciate if the panelists could we'll get up and have to sit in your seats now. But, so we'll give each of the panelists will give a presentation. Just yep. You may as well. And yep, and we're going by alphabetical order. So we'll start off with Lucien, and if you want to sit down or.
I would need to throw the presentation.
Yes. Okay, we get the presentation up for you.
And maybe the microphone.
See my problem. Would you later?
We'll get this someday.
Not to worry, my presentation will only be 45 minutes. Better grab that sushi right now. Thank you. All right, so Lucy and I am with NLEAP Consulting. We live somewhere in between energy and transportation, so I guess very relevant for today's topic. We employ a bunch of new technologies there, optimization through machine learning, and even do some distributed ledger stuff, blockchain. And let's dive right in. My presentation will have a flavor of mostly business rather than regulatory or technology. So that's kind of the flavor here. All right, do not read that unless you can. It's simply there to just show that battery storage, right? It has a tremendous amount of different types of applications. And this slide is really focusing only on grid storage, whether it's in front of the meter, which is basically utility kind of storage, or behind the meter, is just a collection of applications. Demand response, we all heard of that. Whenever the utility needs support for their grid conditions, well, they traditionally rely on what they call curtailment, so reduction in consumption. And so there's a lot of new applications that function basically grandfathered into or piggybacking onto the demand response framework that utilities are very familiar with. Energy storage is supporting that kind of paradigm, that kind of framework. Not going to go through everything, but frequency regulation, some of these are really supporting the power quality aspect of sourcing power and then providing power to the end customer. Smoothing out essentially the supply and the demand, and being able to provide good quality power by using energy storage is definitely more cost effective than maintaining a real-time fleet of very costly generators. So a lot of these products, if you will, are really replacement for what current grid management technology provides already to customers. These are just ways to provide that using energy storage. So whether it's voltage support or black start or reserve market, all of these exist. Now we're looking at energy storage to jump in and do things more effectively. That's simply what this very, very lengthy table is talking about. Just a reminder for everybody who is not, I guess, a utility expert, typically things get broken down into three categories: power generation, power transmission, and power distribution. That's kind of how PG&E and everybody else in the utility industry is thinking about the world. And so this slide and the next couple of slides are kind of grouping applications for storage based on this categorization. So power generation, we're talking about utility-owned power generation, or for most of the world, already divested assets, by which I mean independent companies, independent power producers, or IPPs, who own power plants. Turns out they're very interested in energy storage solutions, because paired with their generation assets, they can provide a much needed buffering from a technology standpoint and also from a business standpoint for the ramp rates, for example, that be an application. Being able to dispatch things in sync with what the utility is expecting, or the California ISO or other ISOs, RTOs in the United States or elsewhere. The profile of that load, the servicing that load, the supply equivalent of the load, can be much better controlled if traditional conventional generation is paired up with battery storage. So essentially this is what this slide is about. Battery storage is one, electric battery storage is one kind of solution, but of course there's pump storage, a whole lot of other technologies, even flywheels and things that the PG&Es of the world have been experimenting with, just listing them there. And for everybody's benefit, I have eliminated 10 slides that describe what those characteristics are. For power transmission, there's a couple of things. There's operational aspects of being able to use storage for transmission planning, but there's the operational aspect. Of what I mean by that is real time. We can do an optimized transmission planning knowing that there's storage that's available, but there's also the aspect of planning investment in transmission assets. How many power lines do we need to build, considering that now we have energy storage available, so that together they can act together to reduce maybe the wear and tear, if you will, on the existing transmission assets by co-managing and co-optimizing the use of transmission assets. We can reduce the cost of the entire transmission system. That's what this says. Finally, power distribution applications that we're all very familiar with from media. Things like pairing up with renewables, electric vehicles, community energy storage, microgrids plus storage. If we have been on similar conferences 5 years ago before storage was big, it was the microgrids, and now we have electric storage that's kind of living within the microgrid space. Community energy storage, very, very big and very important and useful. Hybrid storage, everybody knows, pairing up solar and storage is a big thing these days. EV charging, obviously, mushrooming, I guess, aggregators, the ability to pool energy storage of electric vehicles with maybe stationary storage, and then being able to serve that into the marketplace or for the utility programs that are looking at distributed resources. All of that is a lot easier to facilitate and co-optimize when energy storage is present. California, as was talked about earlier, leading the way. All others almost amounting to what California deployments. This is 2017 numbers. Hawaii following. Residential, non-residential. California still leading the way, front of the meter. We see some Texas deployments, but at the bottom there we can see trends in terms of the front of the meter becoming so important as a forecast. Also, just some detail on utility. Just front of the meter and ISO, and California quite important in terms of leading the way on some interesting projects. Looking at some of the storage stories, I guess, you will see a lot of pump storage. If you're looking at things by megawatt and capacity, we're still looking at a lot of typical battery storage that's building up the numbers. It's easy to get very, very large pump storage in the stats. Not so easy to build dams these days, as you all know. And so, but we're still looking at pump storage that's kind of skewing the statistics a little bit. But everybody today is looking at battery storage as opposed to all of the other sort of
Pump storage is
building new dams.
pumping water upstream.
All right, using the water reservoir of a dam as a means to store energy. No need to go into the detail of state by state. It's just examples basically of what this could probably tell in terms of a story is that various states, various jurisdictions are looking at storage in different ways. Some of the drivers are really inertia, for lack of a better, projects that have been there and kind of. There's also the geography, favoring different types of, as I mentioned, pump storage, perhaps in some areas where just natural, dams and reservoirs and rivers would provide that kind of capability. But I guess the main theme is that everybody's looking at battery storage. Really, that's the story. In spite of some of the statistics that are showing, large reservoirs and pump storage being so large. it's really, we're all here to talk about battery storage, lithium ion and derivatives and maybe one little comment on this. Initially, folks have been looking at lithium ion for both storage for the grid applications as well. Well, there's exceptions always, but everybody had been on the lithium ion bandwagon. What's going on these days is, in many respects, folks are becoming a lot more specialized. The types of application, whether it's power or energy, whether it's one or the other type of product, being ancillary services versus peak shifting, peak shaving, it's now gotten down to trying to match those chemistries and matching those types of technologies to the kinds of applications that fit best. So it's no longer simply a lithium ion would fit every story. So there's something about that where there's a lot more diverse kind of matching of the chemistry to the type of application that fits. And maybe on the right-hand side at the bottom, you see a table there, different types of applications, power quality, grid support, bulk power at the very top. So based on also the type of charge and discharge, whether it's seconds, in terms of the need for that power to be delivered back into the system, whether it's seconds or hours or minutes. There's different chemistries, we all know that. Just a nice little table to show some of those technologies that are applicable based on the kind of need of the product, whether it's a grid need or later we'll talk a little bit about transportation. Just another way to see that California is still leading. And just a number of projects focused on maybe stat on number of projects, still showing electrochemical, when I'm saying that battery storage is the battery aspect is the electrochemical batteries are leading the way. That's where the focus is in terms of technology and money and utilities focus, front and back of the meter. And then in terms of rated power as well, trends are going that way as well.
Sure.
Yes.
You may not know the answer, but I just noticed there, Iowa's deep red says not a lot of storage there, but they're a huge wind territory. Are they just exporting all their wind, or is it just that they haven't gotten around to making a storage?
Which
Iowa.
states? Oh, Iowa.
You're right next to Illinois there, and it's like, they're like second in wind in Texas, you'd think.
Yeah.
Maybe politically it's being held up or something, or?
Well, in most of the cases, I guess, from my experience at least, so I invite everybody's opinion on this. I think that capability of coupling wind and storage and really deploying that sort of down to every jurisdiction that's looking at these things is still, work in progress. It's not that the technology isn't available. It's just sometimes, there's methods and processes that local utilities might have put in place and just kind of relying on wind as it comes, and we kind of look at it when it's there, when it's not, we do something else. The storage wasn't there until very, very recently. So that might be the case of Iowa.
Yeah, I think we can maybe get a bit more into the panel, but I think there's also the issue about the economic models. These are regulated markets, and the batteries are expensive. They need to have the revenue, the regulations that support the revenue need to support the batteries. So that might play a role as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Those markets are still living in a sort of a vertical kind of utility world, which California and all the ISO RTO markets have moved on from. That could be an aspect of driving it. We even have some Japanese. Courtesy of my colleague, Sayaka, is the CEO of Family. She's a Japanese national. We actually tend to consult with mostly Japanese automakers and utilities to the level of 90% of our clients are Japanese. And so this is a slide from our work, simply trying to just outline and summarize, I guess, some of the things we've talked about in terms of products that utilities are looking for, demand charge, energy arbitrage, some of the things that people do with storage. Probably no need to insist on this since we've covered it, otherwise we would head into a 2-hour conversation